Welcome to the June 8th edition of Monday Motivation. I did have a webcast planned for today. I had some fairly long notes, but I think given the current circumstances in North America, Canada, and the US with regards to the murder, the tragic death of George Floyd, totally unnecessary, and for all that's going on right now, I think I'd like to take this webcast and just change it up, talk a little bit, share a little bit of what the Black community is experiencing, and just say that we are here to support you. There's many protests going on right now, and protests are a great way to push for change. We need to change ourselves personally, and that's something we can do a lot faster, but systemic problems, those take a lot longer to change. And we've had U.S. had a Black president for 8 years. Toronto has a Black chief of police. Durham region had a Black MPP lady, and 8 years as prime president of the United States, and he still couldn't fix all the problems. One of the most powerful people in the world. So it goes so deep, but where it can change is with ourselves. And I just want to reach out to the Black community, say that people of all colors, all races, we need to change our heart. We need to change how we look at this, how we approach this. And that's something each of us needs to do as an individual. On the other hand, we see people rioting, we see groups seizing this as an opportunity to create further division. That's not what we need. We need people that are going to build bridges, build understanding. And unfortunately, the media thrives on hype and division. These groups that want to divide and conquer, to wreak havoc, create chaos. But we need to push beyond that. And each one of us as an individual needs to push beyond that. We see Black businesses being looted and destroyed. People's livelihood being taken from them. We see people being murdered on the street in these riots. Black people, white people, all people are at risk. People being injured. And it needs to stop. But again, until people's mindset, until people's heart changes, that can't happen. And we can't fix society overnight, but what do we have control over? We have control over ourselves. There's a lot I could say. There are a number of things I do want to share, but I'll push those out to future webcasts. I just want to say my heart aches and I'm grieved by what's going on. Many people are. Everyone's been the victim of injustice at various points in their life. If you're human, if you live on this planet for more than a few years, you've been a victim in some way. But what I'm seeing and hearing is that for the Black community here in North America, it happens far too often and to a much greater degree than what other people like myself experience. And that's sort of what I'm hearing and reading from this. And how can we make that? How can we change that? How can we change ourselves? How can we change the systems in society to overcome that? My past webcasts was a series on fulfillment, but the 3 key points in there was loving God, loving people, loving yourself. Love God, that's the highest priority. That puts everything in perspective. Loving people, regardless of color, regardless of race. When you realize that God created every person, the person you like, the person you don't like, the person who's the same color as you, the person who is a different color than you. When you realize that, you can then love all people. Doesn't mean you necessarily agree with them, doesn't necessarily mean you get along with them all the time, but you still love them. And you have to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, how can you love other people? You are always feeling like you're a victim. You have to love yourself. So those same 3 principles even apply here in this type of situation. I want to share a post from a friend of mine. I won't share the whole post. His name's Andrew. He's dark. I won't share the whole post, but just some of the points, because I've worked with my life with many Black people. We had a private college with many different cultures, Black cultures, other cultures. And I've had the opportunity to work with many people over long periods of time and get a good understanding. But I still try to understand more of what people are going through. And that creates empathy and understanding to help bridge these gaps. So I'd like to share this, if you don't mind. He says, and I'm not sharing the whole thing, I'm just picking out some key points. In a Canadian context, sometimes racism can be hard to describe. It's not that I'm grasping for straws, but at times it's more covert than some of my experiences living in the US. It's my 9th grade religion teacher telling me I would never graduate. It's the lady in Calgary moving to the other side of the bus when I sat down close to her. It's being pulled over and searched multiple times in my life at the US-Canadian border. It's being held outside my house for 2 hours by police after showing my ID that I lived at that address. It's Walmart employees asking me for 2 pieces of ID to pick up my online grocery order, but they don't ask anybody else. It's getting fired due to cutbacks after I raise an issue of my supervisor calling me a nigger. It's my daughter's teacher telling her that her hair looks messy. It can be hard to describe racism in Canada, but it's easy to feel when it's happening. And when I hear somebody saying that, it makes my heart ache. My heart goes out to people who struggle day after day with these types of abuses. It happens to everybody, but why is it happening so often on a more regular basis? Are there more in-your-face experiences in Canada? Yes, I've been called a nigger on different occasions. And he goes on about some fights. I'm writing to say that for me, George Floyd is more than a hashtag. The experts are saying that to be exposed to traumatic experiences online, as well as viewing distressing news directed at members of one's own racial, ethnic group, are related to poor mental health outcomes. I am hurt. I think I've had pretty much embraced that this is the way things are and I can live with it. I can get through it. I can teach my kids to overcome it. When I search my heart, I have to realize that I'm not okay with the status quo. I want better for my kids. I'm crying as I write this. I want to change. I want equality. And even though I've had many friends, I have many friends from all over the world, anything we can do to gain a better understanding, to help build bridges, is of great value. My first mentor when I went into business was Indian. And great friendship, I learned a lot. But I see the challenges that they have integrating into different cultures and integrating into Canadian culture. And everybody needs to be aware, how can we help people? I do things to help people, but what can we do more to help people fit in so that we all enjoy the same benefits that we have here in Canada? Canada is a great place. There's many great systems here, many great programs. It's one of the best countries in the world to live in. But how can we make it better for all people who live here? Another friend of mine shared a fairly long article on forgiveness. I'll just read a small part of it. For me, this is no longer about anybody else. This is about my personal choice to forgive and let go. Jesus said to pray, "Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors." This is the way of the cross. I'm not perfect. I have sinned and made and still make mistakes. And because I want to be forgiven, I choose to forgive. And forgiveness is necessary on both sides. If we can't forgive, then we continue to carry that anger and that bitterness, and quite often what started with anger and bitterness towards one person is then directed at that whole race, and it grows and grows and grows. We have to forgive. So if somebody has wronged you, whether you're white and you've been wronged by a black person, and whether you're black and you've been wronged by a white person, we need forgiveness. We need healing. So much out there pushes anger, and division. But we need healing. We need forgiveness. My challenge to you this week, be respectful. Pay respect to George Floyd. Pay respect to the feelings and the frustrations and the anger that people are going through. But at the same time, what can you do to make it better? What can you do for your neighbor to make life better for them, to make life easier? to make them feel wanted, to feel accepted, to feel a valuable part of our society. What are you going to do this week for somebody else who is of the other color other than yourself? That's my challenge to you. I'll be sharing more in coming weeks. Look at some of our past webcasts on forgiveness, on fulfillment. Some great stuff in there. But this week, what are you going to do to help make things better? I leave that with you. We'll see you next week on Monday Motivation. Have a great week.